Artificial Intelligence and Illustrated History, from Medieval Robot to Neural Networks. Chapter 1, page number 1, Introduction. So, in other words, there is a chance that AI entities will become so smart and capable that they this form from this form of runaway technology growth, sometimes referred to as a technological singularity, could result in unimaginable changes to civilization, society, and human life. So while the potential benefits of AI are numerous, self-driving cars, efficient business process, and even companionship in countless arenas, humanity will need to be particularly cautious when developing autonomous weapon system and over relying on AI technology with sometimes inscrutable mechanism. For example, studies show the ease with some AI neural net imaging system can be tricked into misidentifying animals as rifles or a picture of a plane as a dog by altering images in ways that humans cannot perceive. If terrorists can make a mall or a hospital look like a military target to a drone, the consequences could be dire. On the other hand, perhaps armed machines with appropriate sensors and rules of ethics could also reduce civilian casualty. Informed policy making is needed to ensure that the potential danger of AI entities do not overshadow their amazing benefits as we increasingly put our trust in AIs with many complex deep learning neural networks. One interesting areas of research is developing AI systems that can explain to humans how they arrive at certain decisions. As we increasingly put our trust in AI with many complex deep learning neural networks, one interesting area of research is developing AI systems that can explain to humans how they arrived at certain decisions. However, forcing AI to explain themselves could potentially cripple them, at least in certain applications. Many of these machines can create far more integrated model of reality than human could possibly understand. AI expert David Gunning has even suggested that the highest performing system will be the least explainable. Book organization and purpose. Author had a long-time fascination with computing and topics at the borderland of science and goal in writing this book is to provide a wide audience with a brief guide to both curious and important practical idea in the history of artificial intelligence, a term that wasn't coined until 1955 by computer scientist John McCarthy. Each book entry is only a few paragraphs in length, allowing reader to jump in at any point in the book without having to sort through a lot of verbages. Of course, this meant I couldn't go into any depth on a subject. However, in the notes and reference sections, there are suggestions for further reading and sourcing for various quotes or credentials of cited author, touching on fields of study as diverse as philosophy, popular culture, computer science, sociology, and theology. The entries in this book also include topics that interested author personally. In fact, when he was younger, he became fascinated with Richard's cybernetic serendipity, the computer and the arts, published in 1969. The book featured computer generated poetry, painting, music, graphics, and more. Today, the application of AI seems limitless, and billions of dollars are invested in the development of AI each year. As you will discover, such technologies have been used to decipher the Vatican's secret archives in an attempt to resolve the complicated handwritten text in this huge historical collection. AI has also been used for predicting earthquakes, interpreting medical images and speech, and for predicting a person's time of death based on patient information in a hospital's electronic health records. AI has been deployed for generating jobs, mathematical theorem, US patents, games and puzzles, innovative design for antennas, new paint colors, new fragrances, and more. Today, as many of us talk to our phones and other devices, our relationship with machine will continue to become even more intimate and human-like in the future, organized chronologically according to the year associated with a key event, publication, or discovery. The dating of book entry is a question of judgment. Some dates are approximate. Whenever possible, he tried to give a justification for the date used. You will also notice an increase in the number of entries after the year 1950. Daniel, author of AI, The Tumultuous History of Search for Artificial Intelligence, notes that in the 1960s, AI blossomed in a thousand flowers. AI researchers applied their new programming techniques to many problems, which, although real, had been carefully simplified, partly to isolate the problem to be addressed, but partly also to fit into the tiny memory of the computer available in those days. The mystery of consciousness, the limit of artificial intelligence, and the nature of the mind will be studied for years to come and have actually intrigued people from ancient times. The author Pamela McCord suggested in her book Machine, who thinks that AI began with an ancient wish to forge the gods. Future AI discoveries will be among humanity's greatest achievements. The story of AI is not only about how we will shape our future, but also about how humans will mess with a landscape of accelerating intelligence and creativity all around us. What will it mean to be human 100 years from now? What will society be like given the increasing use of AI agents? How will jobs be affected? Will we fall in love with robots? If AI method and models are already being used to help determine who gets hired for a job, who we date, who makes payroll, who is likely to develop a psychiatric disorder, and how to autonomously drive cars and drones, then how much control over our lives will we give to AI of the future? As they increasingly make decisions for us, will AI units be easily fooled into making critical errors? How can AI researcher better understand why some machine learning algorithm and architectures are more effective than others, while also making it easier for AI researchers to reproduce one another's result and experiment. Moreover, how can we ensure that AI driven devices behave in an ethical manner? And will machine ever have mental states and feeling in the same sense that humans do? Surely AI machines will help us think new thoughts and dream new dreams, functioning as prosthetics for our feeble brains. For me, AI cultivate a perpetual state of wonder about the limit of thoughts, the future of humanity, and our place in the vast space-time landscape that we call home. Tic-tac-toe. Page number 1, tic-tac-toe. 1300 BC. Archaeologists can trace what appears to be three in a row games to around 1300 BC in ancient Egypt. For tic-tac-toe, two-player 0 and X take turns marking their symbols in the spaces of 3 cross 3 grid. The player who first placed three of his own mark in horizontal, vertical or diagonal row wins. We are interested in triple T for this book because it has often been used as introduction to aspect of artificial intelligence and computer programming. Due to the simplicity of searching its game tree where nodes are positioned in a gram and edges represent moves. Triple T is a perfect information game as all players know all the moves that have taken place. It is also sequential game without randomization, with the players taking turns and avoiding the use of dice. Triple T may be considered an atom upon which the molecules of more advanced games of position were built through the centuries with the slightest of variations and extensions. The simple game of Triple T becomes a fantastic challenge requiring significant time to master. Mathematician and puzzle have extended Triple T to larger boards, higher dimensions, and strange playing surfaces such as rectangular or square board connected at their edges to form a torus, a donut shape, or a surface with just one side. Consider some TTT curiosities. Player can place their X and zeros to fill a triple T board in 9 factorial ways. However, there are 255, 100, 168, 100 possible games, 255,168 possible games in triple T when considering all possible games that end in 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 moves. In 1960, the Mines AI system, a contraption of color, bead, and match boxes, learned to play triple T using reinforcement learning. In the early 1980s, computer genius Danny Bryan and friends built a Tinker Toy computer that played Triple T from 10,000 Tinker Toy pieces. In 1998, researchers and students at the University of Toronto created a robot to play three-dimensional TTT with a human. Page number 3. Page number 3, Talos, 400 BCE. Many people are familiar with the figure of Talos. Writer, author Brian Houghton, through his depiction as a bronze giant in the 1963 movie Jason and the Argonaut. But where did the idea for Talos comes from, and could he have been first robot in history? According to Greek mythology, Talos was a huge bronze automaton whose job was to protect Europa, the mother of King Minos of Crete, from invaders, pirates, and other enemies. Talos was programmed to patrol the island's shore by circling the entirety of Crete 3 times each day. One way of deterring foes involved throwing huge boulders down on them. At other times, the giant robot would leap into a fire until he glowed with heat, then hug the enemy's body to burn him to death. Talos is sometimes depicted as winged creature, as was discovered on coins in Crete from the around 300 BC. Other West painting date to around 400 BC. Various explanations have been given regarding the creation and death of Talos. In one myth, he is made by Hephaestus, the Greek god of metalworking, metallurgy, fire, blacksmith, and other artisans. At the request of Zeus, because Talos was an automaton, his internal structure was less complex than a human's. In fact, Talos had just one vein that ran from his neck to his ankle. The vein was sealed and protected from leaking by bronze nail at the ankle. According to one legend, the Sorkesa Medea drove him mad with death spirit, Keres, and caused him to dislodge the nail. The injured, the divine blood then gushed out of him like molten lead, killing him. Talos is just one example showing how the ancient Greek thought about robots and other automata. For another, consider the work of mathematicians who may have designed and built an automaton driven by steam in the form of self-propelled flying bird called the pigeon. Page number 5, Aristotle's Organon. Page 5, Aristotle's Organon. The Greek philosopher Aristotle touched upon several influential topics during his life that are still of interest to AI researchers today. In this in his book Politics, Aristotle speculated that automation automation could someday replace human slaves. There is only one condition in which we can imagine managers not needing subordinates and master not needing slaves. This condition would be that each instrument could do its own work as the word of command or by intelligent anticipation, like the statue of Daedalus or tripod made by Hephaestus, of which Homer relates that of their own motion they entered the conclave of gods on Olympus, as if Subtle should view of itself and Plectrum should do its own harp playing. Aristotle also pioneered a systematic study of logic. In his Organon instrument writing, he provides approaches for how to investigate truth and how to make sense of the world. The primary tool in Aristotle's toolkit is syllogism, a three-step argument such as all women are mortal. Cleopatra is a woman, therefore Cleopatra is mortal. If the two premises are true, we know that the conclusion must be true. Aristotle also makes a distinction between particular and universal, i.e., general category. Cleopatra is a particular term, whereas woman and mortal are universal term. When universal are used, they are preceded by the words all, some, or no. Aristotle analyzed many possible kinds of syllogism and showed which of them are valid. Aristotle extended his analysis to the syllogism that involved modal logic, that is, statement containing the words possibly or necessarily. Modern mathematical logic can depart from Aristotle's methodologies or extend his work into other kind of sentence structures, including ones that express more complex relationship and ones that involve more than one quantifier, as illustrated by his sentence, no man like all men who dislike some man. Nevertheless, Aristotle's deep study of logic is considered to be one of humankind's greatest achievements, providing an early impulse for many development in mathematics and AI. Page 7, Water Clock, 250 BC. Water clock was significant because it forever changed our understanding of what a man-made object could do. Writes journalist Luke, before clock, only a living thing was thought to be capable of modifying its behavior according to changes in the environment. After clock, self-regulating feedback control system became a part of our technology. The Greek inventor or Ctesibius was famous in Alexandria, Egypt for his devices involving pumps and hydraulics. His water clock is of particular interest because it employed a regulator in the form of feedback control float that maintained a constant water flow rate, thus allowing his timepiece to provide reasonable estimate of time according to the level of water in receiving container. In one version of his clock, unit of time are marked on a column that humanoid figure points to as he rises with the changing water level in the reservoir. In one version of his clock, unit of time are marked on a column. According to some reports, the humanoid figure was accompanied by other mechanisms such as turning pillars and falling stone or eggs, along with the trumpet like sounds. Registers were used to allocate time to speaker in court proceedings and to limit time spent by patrons in Athenian brothels. Was likely the first head of the Museum of Alexandria, an institution that included the Library of Alexandria and that attracted leading scholar of the Hellenistic world. Although he is famous for his particular kind of clepsydras, other related water clocks were also built in ancient China, India, Babylon, Egypt, Persia, and elsewhere. Clock was also reported to have invented an airy robotic status of a deity that was featured in procession, the famous Grand Procession Parade of Philadelphia. This automaton was able to stand up and sit down via the rotation of cams, non-circular wheels that convert circular motion to linear motion that were perhaps linked to the movement of a cart.